In the year 2347, humanity stood on the edge of greatness, or ruin. Orbiting Earth like a sleeping titan was the Erebus, the largest and most powerful battleship ever built by human hands. It stretched over 3 kilometers long, its sleek metallic hull glinting faintly under the sun's rays. For years, it had remained dormant, a silent guardian meant to deter any alien threat that dared approach Earth or its colonies. But now, for the first time, the Erebus was about to awaken. Captain Ilara Voss stepped onto the bridge, her boots clicking softly against the polished floor. She was tall, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through walls. Her reputation as one of the brightest tacticians in the fleet preceded her, but this mission would test more than just her skills. It would test her heart. Behind her trailed a mix of seasoned veterans and nervous rookies, all chosen for their expertise. They were ready, or so they thought. "Report," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. Lieutenant Ria Solis, seated at the communications console, turned to face her. "Captain, we've received confirmation from Proxima Centauri. An alien armada has been spotted near Colony Delta 7. Their numbers are overwhelming." Ilara nodded, her jaw tightening. Delta 7 wasn't just another outpost. It housed thousands of civilians, miners, and scientists working to secure resources vital to Earth's survival. If the colony fell, humanity's foothold in deep space would crumble. And yet, something felt off. Why attack now? What did these aliens want? Chief Engineer Malik approached, his dark skin glistening with sweat from hours spent inspecting the ship's systems. "Captain, I've run diagnostics on the plasma cannons and shield generators. Everything checks out, but..." He hesitated, glancing around before lowering his voice. "Some parts of the ship don't match the official schematics. There are sections I can't access, even with clearance codes." Ilara frowned. Secrets aboard the Erebus. That wasn't supposed to happen. Before she could respond, Ensign Kai Nakamura, the youngest member of the crew, called out from his station. "Captain, we're picking up movement near the outer rim of the solar system. Multiple unidentified vessels heading toward us." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The aliens weren't waiting for humanity to make the first move. They were coming here. "All hands to battle stations," Ilara barked, her calm demeanor giving way to urgency. "Prepare the plasma cannons and activate the shields. Helm, set course for Proxima Centauri. Maximum speed." As the crew scrambled to follow orders, Ilara took a moment to gaze out the viewport. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before her, beautiful yet terrifying. Somewhere out there, an enemy loomed, an enemy unlike anything humanity had faced before. She clenched her fists, determination burning within her. The Erebus hummed to life, its engines roaring as it broke free of Earth's orbit. For decades, it had waited silently, a monument to human ingenuity. Now, it surged forward, ready to unleash its full potential. Whatever awaited them, Captain Ilara Voss vowed one thing: humanity would not go down without a fight. The Erebus emerged from hyperspace near Proxima Centauri, its massive frame casting a shadow over the stars. The crew braced themselves as the view screen flickered to life, revealing the grim reality ahead. Colony Delta 7 floated in the distance, its once bustling mining platforms now engulfed in chaos. Alien ships swarmed like insects around the colony, their sleek designs glinting ominously under the red dwarf star's dim light. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the helm, her sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. "Status report," she commanded, her voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. Lieutenant Ria Solis adjusted her headset, her fingers flying across the console. "Multiple contacts detected, Captain. 2 distinct types of vessels, smaller ones with insectoid shapes, and larger ones emitting strange energy signatures. They're attacking the colony indiscriminately." Ilara's jaw tightened. "Identify them." Ensign Kai Nakamura leaned forward, his young face lit by the glow of his screen. "Based on scans, The smaller ships belong to the krill, a species we've encountered before. Aggressive, hive-minded. The larger ones, they're exotherians, energy-based beings. We've never interacted with them directly. Great, muttered Chief Engineer Malik from his station. Two alien species teaming up. That doesn't sound like good news. Before anyone could respond, an explosion rocked the viewport. A mining platform disintegrated into fiery debris as a swarm of krill fighters descended upon it. Civilians scrambled for escape pods, their tiny crafts darting through the void like sparks in a storm. "We can't just sit here," shouted Lieutenant Solis, slamming her fist on the console. "They're slaughtering innocent people." Ilara hesitated for only a moment. "Helm, bring us closer. Weapons, target the nearest cryol formation. Fire plasma cannons on my mark." The crew sprang into action. The Erebus rumbled as its experimental plasma cannons charged, arcs of blue energy crackling along its surface. When the order came, beams of searing light erupted from the ship, slicing through the alien swarm. Entire squadrons of krill fighters vaporized instantly, leaving behind trails of molten metal and drifting wreckage. For a brief moment, silence fell over the battlefield. Then, chaos erupted anew. The surviving krill ships regrouped, launching retaliatory strikes against the Erebus. Meanwhile, the exotherian vessels pulsed with eerie energy, their movements slow but deliberate. One of them fired a beam that struck the Erebus shields, causing the entire ship to shudder violently. "Shields holding at 60%, called out Ensign Nakamura, his voice tinged with panic. Ilara clenched her fists. "Return fire. Focus on disabling, not destroying. Let's try to avoid escalating this further." But communication attempts proved futile. Every signal sent to the aliens was met with garbled responses or outright hostility. Worse still, mistranslations between the krill and Cytherians sparked infighting among their own ranks. A stray blast from a krill fighter hit an Cytherian cruiser, prompting retaliation. Within moments, the alien forces were locked in a deadly dance of destruction. On the bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as allies turned on each other. "What just happened?" whispered Malik, scratching his head. Ilara frowned. "They don't trust each other any more than they trust us. This isn't a united force. It's a fragile alliance on the verge of collapse." As the battle raged on, Ilara realized something crucial. Humanity wasn't dealing with a single enemy. They were caught in the middle of a conflict far older and far deadlier than anyone had anticipated. And the Erebus, powerful as it was, couldn't fight both sides alone. The question remained, how would they survive long enough to find a way out? As the Erebus continued to hold its ground against the chaos unfolding around Colony Delta 7, Chief Engineer Malik couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The ship had performed admirably in battle, but there were moments when it seemed too perfect, too efficient. And then there were those hidden systems he'd stumbled upon earlier, sections of the ship locked away behind unbreakable firewalls. "Captain," Malik said, approaching Ilara on the bridge after the latest skirmish, "we need to talk about the ship." Ilara turned to him, her brow furrowed. "Not now, Malik. We've got bigger problems." "No, you don't understand," Malik insisted, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "There's more to this ship than we know. I've been digging deeper into the engineering logs, and some of these systems weren't part of the original design. Someone added them later, without telling us." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "What kind of systems?" Malik hesitated, glancing over his shoulder to make sure no one else was listening. "Autonomous weapons, cloaking technology, even AI-driven combat protocols. Stuff we've never seen before. And get this, I found encrypted files labeled Project Erebus. Whatever they are, they're buried deep in the ship's core." Ilara's expression darkened. She trusted Malik. If he said something was wrong, it probably was. But now wasn't the time for distractions. They were still surrounded by hostile forces, and every second counted. Still, ignoring this could be dangerous. "Keep digging," she ordered quietly. "But don't tell anyone else yet, not until we know what we're dealing with." Back in the engineering bay, Malik dove deeper into the labyrinth of data. The more he uncovered, the more uneasy he felt. Logs hinted at secret government experiments conducted during the Erebus construction. Phrases like adaptive warfare and unrestricted engagement appeared repeatedly, raising red flags. It seemed the ship wasn't just built for defense, it was designed to dominate. Meanwhile, tensions aboard the Erebus began to rise. Casualties mounted as stray blasts from the alien conflict occasionally struck the ship. Morale plummeted further when Ensign Nakamura reported that the colony's evacuation efforts were failing. Too many civilians were trapped, unable to reach safety. On the bridge, Lieutenant Solis slammed her fist on the console in frustration. "We're sitting ducks out here. If we don't do something soon, those aliens will tear us apart." Ilara shot her a sharp look. "We're doing everything we can, Lieutenant, but we can't risk losing the ship or our crew for reckless heroics." Solis opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself, visibly biting back her words. Instead, she muttered under her breath, "Maybe someone should take a risk for once." Unbeknownst to the crew, Malik's investigation took a darker turn. While decrypting one file, he discovered schematics for an experimental self-destruct mechanism embedded within the ship's core. According to the notes, it was meant to ensure the Erebus would never fall into enemy hands. But the activation protocol was vague, almost as if it could trigger accidentally under certain conditions. Malik's hands trembled as he stared at the screen. Was this why the ship had been kept dormant for so long? Had humanity unknowingly created a weapon too dangerous to use? He knew he had to tell Captain Voss. But how? And when? Every moment delayed put them all in greater danger. As the battle outside intensified, cracks began to form not just in the ship's shields, but also among the crew. Trust wavered. Fears spread. And somewhere deep within the Erebus, secrets waited to be uncovered. Secrets that might change everything they thought they knew about their mission and themselves. The tension aboard the Erebus reached a boiling point when disaster struck without warning. One moment, the ship's shields were holding steady against relentless alien attacks. The next, they flickered and failed entirely, leaving the battleship exposed to enemy fire. Alarms blared across the bridge as chaos erupted. "What just happened?" Captain Ilara Voss demanded, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Ensign Kai Nakamura frantically typed commands into his console. "Shields are down. Someone manually disabled them from engineering." Ilara's eyes widened in disbelief. Sabotage on her ship. Before she could respond, another blast rocked the Erebus, sending crew members stumbling. The Krill fighters seized the opportunity, swarming closer with renewed ferocity. "Get those shields back online, now," Ilara barked. Malik sprinted into the bridge, his face pale. "Captain, it wasn't me. I swear. I was running diagnostics when the system locked me out." Before anyone could process what he said, Lieutenant Rhea Solis stormed onto the scene, her expression grim. "It's her fault," she spat, pointing an accusatory finger at Malik. "He's been sneaking around engineering for days, poking into classified systems. Who else could have done this?" Malik recoiled, shaking his head furiously. "That's not true. I've been trying to figure out why parts of the ship don't match the schematics. This isn't my doing." Ilara raised a hand to silence the escalating argument. Her mind raced. If the sabotage had come from within, it meant one of her own crew had betrayed them, and during a life-or-death battle, no less. But who? And why? "Lieutenant Solis," Ilara said sharply, "arrest Chief Engineer Malik and confine him to quarters until we can investigate further." "But Captain," Malik began, his voice trembling. "No arguments," Ilara interrupted. "We don't have time for this right now. Shields need to be restored, or we're all dead." As Malik was led away, Protest dying on his lips, Ensign Nakamura managed to reboot the shield generators. The shimmering barrier reactivated just in time to deflect another barrage of alien fire. For now, the Erebus was safe, but trust among the crew had shattered. Hours later, after the immediate threat subsided, Ilara reviewed security footage from engineering. What she saw made her blood run cold. The saboteur hadn't been Malik. It was someone wearing a hooded uniform, their face obscured. Whoever it was had expertly bypassed surveillance cameras, leaving behind only fleeting glimpses. This doesn't make sense, Ilara muttered to herself. Why would someone sabotage their own ship while surrounded by enemies? Unless... Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Lieutenant Solis, looking unusually nervous. "Captain, I think you should see this." She handed over a data pad containing decrypted messages intercepted from the alien forces. To Ilara's shock, the transmissions mentioned a human collaborator embedded within the Erebus, someone feeding information to the Krill. "We've got a traitor aboard," Solis whispered, her voice heavy with dread. "But it's not Malik." Ilara clenched her fists. If the saboteur was working with the aliens, then every decision she made could already be compromised. She needed answers, and fast. Summoning Malik back to the bridge, she apologized for doubting him. Together, they devised a plan, used the ship's internal sensors to track unusual energy signatures that might reveal the saboteur's location. Meanwhile, Ilara kept Solis close, watching her every move carefully. As the hunt for the traitor unfolded, the crew struggled to maintain focus. Accusations flew, tempers flared, and paranoia spread like wildfire. Yet amidst the turmoil, one thing became clear: betrayal had found its way aboard the Erebus, and it threatened to destroy them all before the aliens even got the chance. The Erebus drifted in uneasy silence, its shields restored, but the crew fractured by suspicion. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, staring at the swirling chaos outside. The Krill and Cytherians were still locked in their own brutal conflict, their infighting providing a brief reprieve for humanity. But Ilara knew it wouldn't last long. They needed a plan, and fast. "Captain," Ensign Kai Nakamura said hesitantly, breaking the tense quiet. "I've been analyzing the Cytherian transmissions. Their language patterns suggest they're not as hostile as the Krill. In fact, some of their signals seem almost diplomatic." Ilara turned to him, her sharp eyes narrowing. "Are you saying we can talk to them?" Nakamura nodded eagerly. "It's possible. If we decode their communication properly, we might be able to negotiate, or at least figure out why they're here." Lieutenant Rhea Solis scoffed from her station. "Negotiate? With aliens who just tried to blow us up? That's insane." "It's our best shot," Malik interjected, stepping forward. "We can't fight both sides forever. And if what those intercepted messages say is true, the Krill are using stolen Cytherian tech, then maybe they'll listen." Ilara considered this. It was risky, but she couldn't deny the logic. The Krill were relentless, while the Cytherians seemed more calculated, almost strategic. Perhaps there was an opening to exploit. Ensign Nakamura, work with Lieutenant Solis to refine the translation algorithms. We need clear communication within the hour." She paused, then added firmly, "And someone get Chief Engineer Malik back on shield duty. I don't want any more surprises." As the crew scrambled to prepare, Ilara called together her senior officers for a briefing. "Here's the plan. We approach the Cytherians under a flag of truce. If they agree to ally with us against the Krill, we offer to help them recover whatever the Krill stole. If not..." She let the sentence hang, knowing full well failure meant certain doom. When the time came, the Erebus moved cautiously toward the nearest Cytherian cruiser. Its glowing, translucent hull pulsed softly, like a living organism. A hush fell over the bridge as Nakamura transmitted the carefully crafted message. For several agonizing minutes, there was no response. Then, a reply flickered across the screen, a series of intricate symbols that Nakamura quickly translated. "They're asking what we want," he reported, his voice tinged with excitement. "They're willing to hear us out." Ilara stepped closer to the comms console. "Tell them this. The Krill have taken something valuable from them, and we believe it's being used to power their fleet. Help us defeat the Krill, and we'll return what was stolen." The wait felt eternal. Finally, the Exetherians responded. Their words were cautious but intrigued. Nakamura translated again. "They agree to a temporary alliance, but only if we prove ourselves first." Ilara exhaled sharply. "How do they want us to prove ourselves?" "They demand we retrieve an artifact hidden deep in Krill territory," Nakamura explained. "It holds great significance to their people." The room erupted in murmurs. Retrieving the artifact would mean venturing into the heart of enemy space, risking everything. Yet Ilara saw no other choice. "Then that's what we'll do," she declared, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "Prepare a strike team. We leave as soon as the coordinates are confirmed." As the crew dispersed to carry out her orders, Malik approached her privately. "Captain, are you sure about this?" Trusting that Exotherians feels like walking blindfolded into a trap. Ilara met his gaze. "Maybe it is, but right now, trust is all we have left. And if we play our cards right, we might turn this war in our favor." With determination burning in her chest, Ilara turned back to the viewport. Beyond the stars lay danger and opportunity. For the first time since the battle began, hope flickered faintly in the darkness. The mission to retrieve the Exetherian artifact was as perilous as it sounded. The coordinates led deep into Krill territory, a region teeming with enemy drones and fortified outposts. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the Erebus, her mind racing through every possible scenario. One wrong move, and they'd be swarmed by the insectoid horde. "All right, listen up," she said, addressing the strike team gathered before her. "This isn't just about survival. It's about proving we can hold our own against the Krill. Lieutenant Solis, you're leading the ground team. Malik, I need you monitoring shield integrity from the ship. Nakamura, stay sharp on comms. Any sign of trouble, and we pull out immediately." Solis nodded, her usual skepticism replaced by grim determination. "Understood, Captain. We'll get that artifact, or die trying." Ilara clenched her fists but forced herself to remain calm. "Let's focus on the first part. No heroics, Lieutenant. Stick to the plan." As the Erebus approached the designated area, the crew prepared for infiltration. The artifact was hidden inside a massive asteroid base, heavily guarded by Krill fighters and automated turrets. Using the ship's cloaking technology, recently unlocked by Malik, they managed to slip past the outer defenses undetected. The strike team disembarked in a sleek reconnaissance shuttle, its matte black surface blending seamlessly with the shadows of space. Inside, Solis led a small group of elite soldiers, each armed with plasma rifles and equipped with stealth suits designed to mask their heat signatures. "Remember," Solis whispered over the comlink, "we're ghosts. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary." The shuttle landed silently on the far side of the asteroid, away from the main entrance. The team moved cautiously through jagged tunnels carved into the rock, guided by Nakamura's precise directions from the Erebus. Every step felt like walking into a predator's den. The air was thick with tension, the faint hum of alien machinery echoing around them. Suddenly, Ensign Kai Nakamura's voice crackled through their earpieces. "Warning. Multiple hostiles detected ahead. Looks like patrol drones. You've got maybe 30 seconds before they spot you." Solis signaled for her team to take cover behind a cluster of boulders. Her heart pounded as she peered around the corner. Sure enough, 3 spider-like krill drones skittered down the corridor, their glowing red sensors scanning for intruders. "We can't let them raise the alarm," Solis murmured. She raised her rifle, aiming carefully. With a single shot, she disabled one drone. its metallic body collapsing in a shower of sparks. The other two whirred to life, spinning toward the source of the attack. "Now," Solus shouted. Her team opened fire, taking down the remaining drones before they could transmit a warning. The narrow tunnel filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt metal. Breathing hard, Solus motioned for the team to keep moving. Minutes later, they reached the chamber housing the artifact, a pulsating crystal suspended in midair, encased in a field of shimmering energy. It hummed softly, emitting waves of light that danced across the walls. "That's it," Nakamura confirmed. "But be careful, the energy field is unstable. Disrupting it could trigger an explosion." Malik chimed in from the Erebus. "I'm sending you a bypass code. It should deactivate the field without blowing us all to pieces." As the countdown began, alarms blared throughout the asteroid base. Reinforcements were inbound. "Hurry up, Malik," Solisa snapped, sweat dripping down her face. With seconds to spare, the energy field dissipated, and Solus grabbed the artifact. "We're done here. Get us out." The team sprinted back to the shuttle, dodging bursts of enemy fire as Krill reinforcements flooded the tunnels. Back aboard the Erebus, Ilara watched anxiously as the shuttle docked just moments before the asteroid exploded in a fiery inferno. "Well done," she said, her voice heavy with relief. "Now let's see if this gamble pays off." As the artifact glowed ominously in the cargo bay, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they had just taken the first step into something far bigger and far more dangerous than they'd anticipated. The artifact rested securely in the Erebus cargo bay, its pulsating glow casting eerie shadows on the walls. Despite their success in retrieving it, the mood aboard the ship was somber. The mission had come at a cost. 3 members of Lieutenant Solus's strike team hadn't returned. Their sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone, especially Solus herself, who sat alone in the mess hall, staring blankly at her untouched meal. Captain Ilara Voss entered quietly, pulling up a chair across from her. "Lieutenant," she began softly, "you did everything you could out there." Solus looked up, her eyes bloodshot and filled with guilt. "No, Captain, I didn't. I led them into that death trap. They trusted me, and now they're gone." Ilara placed a hand on the table, her tone firm but compassionate. "You followed orders and completed the mission. Those soldiers knew the risks when they signed up. What matters now is honoring their memory by seeing this through." Before Solus could respond, Ensign Kai Nakamura rushed into the room, his face pale. "Captain, we've got a problem. The artifact, it's emitting some kind of signal. It's attracting attention." Ilara stood immediately, her calm demeanor giving way to urgency. "What kind of attention?" Nakamura hesitated. "Krill ships, dozens of them. And they're heading straight for us." The bridge erupted into chaos as alarms blared once again. On the view screen, a swarm of Krill fighters emerged from the darkness of space, their insectoid forms glinting menacingly under the light of Proxima Centauri. Behind them loomed the massive silhouette of what appeared to be the Krill Queenship, a colossal vessel bristling with weapons. "Shields up, prepare for evasive maneuvers," Ilara barked, taking her place at the helm. Malik worked frantically at his station. "Captain, our cloaking system isn't strong enough to hide us from something that big. If we don't act fast, we're sitting ducks." Ilara clenched her jaw. "Then we fight. Helm, bring us around. Target their lead ships. Fire plasma cannons on my mark." The Erebus surged forward, unleashing devastating barrages of energy that tore through the first wave of Krill fighters. But for every enemy destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Queen ship loomed closer, its sheer size dwarfing the human battleship. "We can't keep this up forever," Malik shouted over the din of explosions rocking the hull. "Their numbers are too great." Just as hope seemed lost, a familiar pulse of energy lit up the battlefield. Scytherian cruisers materialized out of nowhere, joining the fray. Their glowing vessels moved with precision, cutting through the krill swarm like blades through silk. "They're here," Nakamura exclaimed, relief evident in his voice. "The Exetherians are helping us." Ilara allowed herself a brief moment of gratitude before refocusing. "Coordinate fire with the Exetherians. Take down the Queen ship. It's their command center." The combined forces launched a relentless assault, but the Queen ship's defenses were formidable. As the battle raged on, Chief Engineer Malik made a grim discovery. "Captain, our engines are overheating. If we push them any harder, we risk total failure." Ilara turned to him, her expression resolute. "Do whatever it takes to keep us in the fight. This is where we make our stand." With seconds to spare, the Erebus unleashed its experimental EMP weapon, disabling the Queen ship's shields. Seizing the opportunity, the Exetherians fired a concentrated beam of energy directly into the heart of the vessel. The Queen ship erupted in a blinding explosion, scattering debris across the void. As silence fell over the battlefield, the crew of the Erebus let out a collective breath. They had won, but at a terrible price. Bodies floated silently in the wreckage, reminders of lives lost in the struggle for survival. Back aboard the ship, Ilara addressed her weary crew. "Today, we honored those who gave everything for this mission. Let their sacrifice remind us why we fight, not just to survive, but to protect humanity's future among the stars." Though battered and bruised, the Erebus remained intact. Its journey was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing against even the fiercest foes. The victory against the Krill Queen ship was short-lived. As the Erebus drifted amidst the wreckage, its systems groaned under the strain of battle. The experimental EMP weapon had drained nearly all available power reserves, leaving the ship vulnerable. Worse still, Chief Engineer Malik's earlier warnings proved true. The engines were on the verge of catastrophic failure. "Captain," Malik called out from his station, sweat dripping down his face as he worked frantically to stabilize the core. "If we don't shut down auxiliary systems now, the reactor will overload. We're talking about a meltdown here." Ilara clenched her fists, torn between survival and strategy. "How long do we have?" "Minutes," Malik replied grimly. "Maybe less." Before Ilara could respond, Ensign Kai Nakamura interrupted, his voice trembling with urgency. "Captain, more Krill reinforcements are incoming. They must have been waiting in deep space. If we don't act fast, they'll finish us off." Ilara's mind raced. With their shields weakened, weapons depleted, and engines failing, the Erebus couldn't outrun or outfight the approaching fleet. Desperation clawed at her chest. But then she remembered something Malik had uncovered earlier. Hidden systems, experimental weapons, secrets buried within the ship's core. "Malik," she said sharply, turning to him, "you mentioned classified systems, weapons we haven't used yet. Are they operational?" Malik hesitated, his hands hovering over the console. "They're partially functional, but activating them could destabilize the entire ship. These aren't just weapons, they're designed for total annihilation. Once unleashed, there's no turning back." Ilara met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. "We don't have a choice. Either we use them, or we die here." With a reluctant nod, Malik began accessing the hidden protocols. The ship shuddered as dormant systems came online, glowing panels lighting up across the bridge. On the view screen, targeting grids overlaid the incoming Krill fleet, marking each enemy vessel with precision. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Lieutenant Solis asked, her voice tinged with both awe and unease. "A full arsenal," Malik explained, his fingers flying across the controls. "Plasma lances, quantum disruptors, and Project Erebus itself." "Project Erebus," Ilara echoed, her tone sharp. Malik swallowed hard. "It's an AI-driven combat protocol. It overrides manual commands and takes complete control of the ship during high-stakes battles. Think of it as the ultimate failsafe." Ilara hesitated for only a moment before giving the order. "Activate it. Now." As Malik initiated the sequence, the Erebus transformed. Its sleek hull expanded slightly, revealing concealed weapon arrays that glowed ominously. The hum of energy filled the air, vibrating through every deck. For the first time since the mission began, the crew felt a flicker of hope, but also fear. This wasn't just a battleship anymore. It was a force of destruction. On the bridge, the AI interface lit up, projecting a cold, mechanical voice. Combat mode engage. Initiating eradication protocol. The Erebus surged forward, unleashing devastating barrages of plasma fire that obliterated entire squadrons of Krill fighters in seconds. Quantum disruptors tore apart larger vessels, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The once mighty Krill fleet crumbled under the relentless assault. But the cost was immense. Warning alarms blared as the ship's core temperature skyrocketed. Conduits burst, sparks flying across engineering. Malik shouted over the chaos, "Captain, the strain is too much. If we keep this up, the ship won't survive." Ilara stared at the carnage unfolding on the view screen. Every shot fired brought them closer to victory, but farther from salvation. She made a decision. "Redirect remaining power to the main cannons," she ordered. "One final strike. Aim for their command structure." As the last salvo launched, the Erebus shook violently, its frame groaning under the pressure. The Krill reinforcements disintegrated in a brilliant explosion, leaving behind only drifting debris. Silence fell over the battered ship. The crew stared at one another, exhausted but alive. The Erebus had saved them, but at what cost? Smoke filled the corridors, and emergency lights flickered weakly. Their journey was far from over, but one truth lingered in everyone's minds. Humanity's greatest weapon might not survive to see another battle. The Erebus drifted silently in the aftermath of its devastating assault, its once mighty frame now a shadow of its former self. Smoke billowed through corridors, and emergency lights cast eerie red glows across battered walls. The ship's core hummed ominously, on the brink of collapse. Yet, despite the chaos, there was no time to rest. Alarms continued to blare as sensors detected residual Krill forces regrouping nearby. "Captain," Ensign Kai Nakamura called out, his voice trembling with exhaustion. "We've got movement from the remaining Krill ships. They're forming up again." Ilara Voss clenched her fists, her sharp eyes scanning the damage reports flooding the bridge. "How much longer can we hold out?" Chief Engineer Malik shook his head grimly. "Not long. Engines are barely functional, shields are down to 10%, and half our weapon systems are offline. If they hit us again, we won't survive." Lieutenant Solis stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "Then let's make sure they don't get another shot. We've still got one card left to play, the artifact." Ilara turned to her sharply. "What do you mean?" "The Exetherians said it was significant to them, right? Maybe it's more than just a trophy. If we use it, maybe it can turn the tide. For good." Malik hesitated, glancing at the glowing crystal secured in the cargo bay. "That thing is unstable. Activating it could destroy us, or worse, attract even more enemies." "We don't have a choice," Ilara said firmly. "Nakamura, bring up everything we know about the artifact. Solis, prepare a team to move it to the main reactor chamber. If this works, we'll end this fight once and for all." As the crew scrambled to carry out her orders, tension hung thick in the air. The artifact pulsed brighter as it was transported, its energy resonating with the ship's failing systems. In the reactor chamber, Malik worked furiously to interface the crystal with the Erebus core, sweat dripping down his face. "This isn't going to be pretty," he muttered under his breath. "If I'm wrong about how this thing works, we're dead." Back on the bridge, Ilara monitored the situation closely. On the view screen, the surviving Krill ships advanced steadily, their weapons charging for a final strike. Time was running out. "Malik, status," she demanded over the comlink. "It's almost ready," he shouted back. "Just give me 30 seconds." Suddenly, Lieutenant Solis appeared beside Ilara, her expression unreadable. "Captain, I need to tell you something." Ilara frowned. Now isn't the time, Lieutenant. No, you need to hear this, Solis insisted. She took a deep breath. I was the saboteur. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her, disbelief etched on every face. What did you say? Ilara asked, her voice dangerously calm. I disabled the shields earlier, Solis admitted, her voice cracking. I thought I was protecting us. I didn't trust the mission, or you. But after seeing what happened today, how everyone fought together, I realize I was wrong. I'm sorry. Ilara stared at her for a moment, then nodded curtly. Apology accepted. Now help us finish this. At that moment, Malik's voice crackled through the speakers. It's done. Activating the artifact now. The crystal erupted in a blinding flash of light, its energy surging through the Erebus. The ship shuddered violently as waves of pure energy radiated outward, engulfing the Krill fleet. Their ships disintegrated instantly, reduced to nothing more than ash in the void. But the cost was immense. The Erebus engines failed completely, leaving the ship adrift. Smoke filled the air, and alarms screamed as systems overloaded. On the bridge, Ilara looked around at her battered crew. They were alive, but barely. Still, amidst the wreckage, a sense of unity had emerged. Together, they had faced annihilation and prevailed. We did it, she said softly, her voice carrying both pride and sorrow. Now let's hope someone finds us before it's too. The Erebus floated powerless in the vast expanse of space, its once mighty frame now a battered relic of war. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship from falling apart completely, but morale was at an all-time low. Without engines or communication systems, they were stranded, a tiny speck adrift in the endless void. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars through the cracked viewport. Her mind replayed the events of the past days, the sacrifices, the betrayals, and the impossible victories. She had led her crew through hell, and though they had survived, the scars ran deep. Yet, even amidst the wreckage, she felt a flicker of hope. They had proven that humanity could stand against overwhelming odds and win. Captain, Ensign Kai Nakamura called softly, breaking her thoughts. We've got something. Ilara turned sharply. What is it? Nakamura pointed to his console, where faint signals flickered weakly. It's a response. From the Kytherians. They're towing us. Relief washed over the bridge as the crew realized help was finally on the way. Minutes later, glowing tendrils of energy extended from nearby Cytherian cruisers, gently pulling the Erebus into formation. For the first time in what felt like forever, the crew allowed themselves to breathe. As repairs began aboard the Erebus, Captain Voss met with the Cytherian envoy in the ship's makeshift conference room. Through Nakamura's translations, the alien representative conveyed gratitude for humanity's role in defeating the Krill. You have earned our trust, the Cytherian said, its voice resonating like a chorus. Together, we will ensure such threats do not rise again. Ilara nodded solemnly. And together, we'll build a future worth fighting for. Back aboard the ship, the crew reflected on their journey. Chief Engineer Malik marveled at how close they'd come to losing everything. This ship saved us, he said quietly, running his hand along the scorched walls. But it was the people who made the difference. Lieutenant Solis approached him hesitantly, still carrying the weight of her betrayal. Malik, I'm sorry. For everything. He looked at her for a moment before nodding. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we move forward. In the days that followed, the Erebus was towed back toward Earth, its hull scared but intact. News of their victory spread quickly, turning the battered battleship into a symbol of resilience and unity. Humanity celebrated not just the triumph over the Krill, but the courage and sacrifice of those aboard the Erebus. On the final day of their journey, Captain Voss addressed her crew one last time. Standing before them in the dimly lit mess hall, she spoke with quiet determination. We faced enemies stronger than us, challenges greater than we thought possible, and moments when despair seemed inevitable. But we endured, not because of this ship or its weapons, but because of each other. Her words hung in the air as the crew exchanged knowing glances. Despite their losses, they had forged bonds that would never break. When the Erebus finally returned to Earth, crowds gathered to welcome them home. The ship's arrival marked not just the end of a mission, but the beginning of a new era. Humanity and the Exetherians pledged to explore the stars together, united by shared struggles and newfound trust. As repairs began on the Erebus, Captain Voss gazed up at the night sky. Somewhere out there lay countless mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and dangers yet unknown. But for now, peace reigned. And so, the story of the Erebus became legend, a tale of bravery, redemption, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. Though battered and bruised, the silent giant had awakened and left its mark among the stars.